The village of Sleepy Hollow slumbered. Nestled deep within a wooded glen, it wore an air of perpetual twilight. Ancient trees, gnarled and twisted, clawed at the sky. Their branches intertwined overhead, forming a canopy that choked the sunlight. A palpable sense of dread hung heavy in the air, a chilling reminder of the village's shadowed past. Sleepy Hollow was a place of whispers and shadows, where ancient legends refused to die. The villagers spoke in hushed tones of the spirits that haunted the surrounding woods. They told tales of restless souls, forever bound to the earth. Their stories painted a vivid picture of a world where the veil between the living and the dead was thin. Nowhere was this more evident than in the legend of the Headless Horseman, the village's most terrifying spectre. Ichabod Crane, the village schoolmaster, cut a gaunt and ungainly figure. His appearance was almost spectral, with his tall, lanky frame draped in a dark, threadbare suit that seemed to hang off him like a shroud. His presence was both commanding and unsettling, a figure that seemed to belong more to the world of shadows than to the bustling village of Sleepy Hollow. Tall and lanky, with a beak-like nose and large, startled eyes, he seemed perpetually out of place. His eyes, wide and always alert, gave him a look of constant surprise, as if he were forever on the brink of discovering some hidden truth or encountering some unseen spectre. His awkward demeanour only added to his air of mystery, making him a subject of both curiosity and unease among the villagers. He had arrived in Sleepy Hollow from Connecticut, drawn by the promise of employment and the allure of the unknown. The village, with its rich tapestry of legends and folklore, seemed the perfect place for a man of his peculiar interests. He was eager to immerse himself in the local culture, to uncover the stories that lay hidden in the shadows of this seemingly quaint and quiet town. Ichabod was a man of insatiable curiosity, particularly when it came to matters of the supernatural. By day, he was a diligent schoolmaster, but by night, he transformed into an avid seeker of the unknown. He would spend countless hours poring over old books and manuscripts, his candle flickering as he delved into tales of ghosts and spirits. His fascination with the supernatural was not just a hobby. It was an obsession that consumed his every waking thought. He devoured every ghost story and local legend, his imagination running wild with each chilling tale. The more he read, the more his mind conjured up vivid images of the spectral beings that haunted the pages of his books. He would often find himself lost in these stories, his mind wandering to places where the line between reality and fantasy blurred. Each tale added fuel to the fire of his imagination, making the world around him seem even more mysterious and filled with hidden dangers. I see omens and portents in every shadow, every creak of a floorboard, every rustle of leaves in the wind. To Ichabod, the world was a place filled with signs and symbols, each one a potential harbinger of some supernatural event. He would often pause in his tracks, his heart racing, as he interpreted the sounds and sights around him as messages from the other side. His heightened sense of awareness made him both a keen observer and a prisoner of his own fears. He would spend hours in the village tavern, listening intently as the locals spun their yarns. The tavern was a place where stories flowed as freely as the ale, and Ichabod was a willing and eager audience. He would sit in a corner, his eyes wide with anticipation, as the villagers recounted their encounters with the supernatural. Each story, no matter how outlandish, was a treasure trove of information for him, a piece of the puzzle that he was determined to solve. The more outlandish the tale, the more enthralled he became. Stories of headless horsemen, ghostly apparitions and haunted houses captivated his imagination. He would hang on every word, his mind racing to piece together the mysteries that the villagers spoke of. To him, these tales were not just entertainment. They were glimpses into a world that he longed to understand and explore. Little did he know that his fascination with the supernatural would soon lead him down a dangerous path. His relentless pursuit of the unknown would bring him face to face with the very legends he had so eagerly sought to uncover. The line between reality and fantasy would blur, and Ichabod would find himself caught in a web of his own making, where the shadows held more than just secrets. They held the key to his fate. The legend of the Headless Horseman was as old as Sleepy Hollow itself. It was said that he was the ghost of a Hessian soldier, decapitated by a stray cannonball during the Revolutionary War. His headless body had been buried in the old churchyard, but his spirit, forever searching for his missing head, rode on. Every night he emerged from his grave, a terrifying spectre mounted on a fiery steed. Silent, as the legend describes his eerie presence. Some whispered that he carried a jack-o'-lantern in place of his head, its grotesque grin illuminated by an infernal glow. Others claimed to have seen him holding his severed head aloft, its eyes burning with an unholy fire. The mere mention of his name was enough to send shivers down the spines of even the bravest souls in Sleepy Hollow. Autumn had descended upon Sleepy Hollow, painting the trees in hues of crimson and gold. The once vibrant village now seemed to be cloaked in a shroud of mystery, as if the very air carried whispers of untold stories. The air grew crisp, and a sense of unease settled upon the village. The villagers spoke in hushed tones, their eyes darting nervously as they recounted tales of the supernatural. The fog that rolled in each evening seemed thicker, more oppressive, as if it were hiding something sinister within its folds. It was on such a night that Ichabod Crane found himself returning home from a quilting frolic at the Van Tassel farm. The night was dark, the moon obscured by clouds, casting eerie shadows that danced along the path. The rhythmic clopping of his horse's hooves was the only sound that broke the silence, a silence that seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment. My heart raced with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The evening had been enchanting, filled with laughter and music. Yet now the darkness seemed to close in around me, amplifying every rustle of leaves, every distant hoot of an owl. I had lingered longer than intended, captivated by the charms of Katrina Van Tassel, the daughter of a wealthy farmer. Her laughter was like a melody that played over and over in my mind, and her smile had a way of making the world seem brighter, even on the darkest of nights. As he made his way along the darkened path, his mind replayed the events of the evening, the warmth of the fire, the camaraderie of friends, and the fleeting moments of connection with Katrina. Yet, with each step, the warmth seemed to fade, replaced by a growing sense of dread. He had danced with Katrina, shared ghost stories by the firelight, and even dared to dream of winning her hand in marriage. The stories had been thrilling, filled with spectres and phantoms, but now, alone in the dark, they seemed all too real. In the deepening shadows, his thoughts turned to the tales of the Headless Horseman, the legend that had been passed down through generations, a spectre that haunted the dreams of the villagers. The very thought of it sent a chill down his spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Every rustle of the leaves, every snap of a twig seemed to echo with the presence of an unseen observer. His heart pounded in his chest and he urged his horse to move faster, desperate to escape the oppressive darkness that seemed to close in around him. The path ahead seemed endless, a winding trail through the heart of the forest. Ichabod's mind raced with thoughts of escape, of reaching the safety of his home. But the shadows seemed to grow longer, the darkness deeper, as if the forest itself were conspiring to keep him trapped within its grasp. He glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see the ghostly figure of the Headless Horseman emerging from the shadows. The fear was palpable, a tangible force that drove him onward, his horse's hooves pounding against the earth in a frantic rhythm. The moon broke through the clouds for a brief moment, casting a silvery light on the path ahead. It was a fleeting glimpse of hope, a reminder that dawn would come, that the darkness would eventually give way to light. But for now, the chase had only just begun. The sound of approaching hoofbeats shattered the stillness of the night. The forest, usually a sanctuary of peace, now felt like a trap closing in on Ichabod. Each beat of the hooves seemed to echo louder, reverberating through the trees, amplifying the sense of impending doom. Ichabod's heart pounded in his chest as he urged his old horse, Gunpowder, into a gallop. The horse, though aged and weary, responded to Ichabod's desperate pleas. its muscles straining with every stride. The wind whipped through Ichabod's hair, and the branches of the trees seemed to reach out like skeletal hands trying to pull him back. He risked a glance over his shoulder and let out a gasp of terror. The sight that met his eyes was enough to freeze the blood in his veins. The dark figure was gaining on him, its presence a looming shadow that seemed to swallow the moonlight. Silhouetted against the moonlit sky was a monstrous figure on horseback. The rider's form was shrouded in darkness, an ominous silhouette that seemed to merge with the night itself. The moon cast an eerie glow, highlighting the contours of the horseman's cloak, making him appear even more otherworldly. The rider was cloaked in shadow, but even from this distance, I could tell that he was headless. The absence of a head made the figure even more terrifying, a grotesque mockery of a man. The Headless Horseman was a legend in Sleepy Hollow, but seeing it with his own eyes was a nightmare come to life. The horseman gave chase, his steed gaining ground with every stride. The horse moved with an unnatural speed, its hooves barely touching the ground. It was as if the very forces of darkness were propelling it forward, driving it relentlessly towards its prey. Ichabod could hear the rhythmic thud of the horse's hooves against the soft earth, like the beating of a monstrous heart. Each thud seemed to resonate within him, a grim reminder of the relentless pursuit. The forest floor, usually a bed of leaves and twigs, now felt like a drum, amplifying the sound of the chase. The sound echoed through the trees, amplified by the silence of the night. The once familiar woods now seemed alien and hostile, every shadow a potential threat. The echoes created a disorienting cacophony, making it hard to tell where the sounds were coming from, adding to Ichabod's growing panic. Terror lent wings to Ichabod's flight as he spurred Gunpowder onward, desperate to escape the clutches of the horrifying spectre. His mind raced with thoughts of escape, but the forest seemed endless, a labyrinth of darkness and fear. Every muscle in his body screamed for relief, but he couldn't afford to slow down. The woods were silent, save for the sounds of the chase. The stillness was oppressive, a heavy blanket that seemed to smother all hope. The trees stood like silent sentinels, watching the drama unfold with indifferent eyes. And thus the chase began, a desperate flight through the haunted woods of Sleepy Hollow. The legend of the Headless Horseman was no longer just a story told to frighten children. It was a living nightmare, a relentless pursuit that would test the very limits of Ichabod's courage and endurance. The night was far from over and the outcome was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the horseman would not rest until he had claimed his prize.